Before I kick this off, I want to inform everyone that the crew I'm about to talk about for a little bit, Reboot Rewind / Reboot Revival, have the master tapes and are working on remastering them, but it's not free and they do need some help. I've left the link down below for the Indiegogo for everyone to check out and donate if you so wish, as well as a link to their channels and everything else I talk about here, so stay frosty and enjoy the video. Reboot is one of my favorite shows ever made. Naturally, this comes from me watching it as a kid, but even for something that started as a typical kids show with a new adventure every week, it still managed to sneak in adult themes, and the series grew up and became much more dark as the audience grew up. Reboot was a huge hit back in the 90s. You have the core show, loads of action figures, a ride that, if some of the designers weren't the exact same people, plenty of theme parks would rip off its layout nearly beat for beat. And of course, a video game. A video game considered terrible even for back then, but it is Reboot, and I do have a love for this game still, along with my original copy. Reboot was primed to be a huge franchise and was already on a pretty good path until its abrupt cancellation and the creators all quitting once their studio, Mainframe Entertainment, got bought out. Reboot would then get rebooted with a travesty that is the Guardian Code on Netflix, and while it had some good ideas, some alright animation, and surprisingly bringing back the original voice actors for 5 minutes, and even finding a solid replacement for the late great veteran voice actor Tony Jay, who voiced the main villain on the show, Megabyte. If that name sounds familiar to you, then you just might know him like this.
I am the engine of life, the source of Nosgoth's very existence. I am the hub of the wheel, the origin of all life, the devourer of death.
And then the bard looted the chest which contained the widow's most precious... Wait a minute. Did I read that properly? You're stealing from her?
I wouldn't call it stealing, exactly. I mean, people leave all kinds of things in chests, and they never seem to object when I help myself. Think of it as a public service. I mean, who knows how cluttered these chests might become if I didn't do my part to help clean them out.
In hindsight, I'm surprised it took the bard this long to get his hands on Mary's chest.
Now that I command Hexadecimal's power, none can stand against me.
What? Where am I? It seems I have been digitally enhanced. Impressive. Now to corrupt and conquer. Hexadecimal, that is my throne. All in good time, dear sister. First you must prove your worth. Then we can discuss the seating arrangements. Leave that alone.
Why must you be such a mega grump?
Consider it a reminder of my ultimate power. This is my fortress, my throne, and that is my sphere.
The Guardian Code ultimately failed for reasons I don't care to explain. I'm sure you can guess. So, on a rewatch of Reboot this year, I was ultimately surprised when a dedicated group of fans for the show, going by Reboot Rewind / Reboot Revival teams, released an 8-part documentary this year that covers the beginning, the end, and the possible future of Reboot. Naturally, that got me thinking about a new Reboot video game and how it could possibly be done. Reboot's premise revolves around the Guardian Bob as he protects Mainframe, a world inside of a computer, from the evil viruses Megabyte and Hexadecimal. Bob also plays GameCubes, yes, I'm not even kidding, GameCubes, every other episode or so, and each one is a mock game based on real games. So if you are watching Reboot and they are in a racing game and you get the mood, you can go boot up some racing game yourself. Love the Bad Bob Mad Max parody episode? Congrats, you can actually play a Mad Max game now. Tomb Raider, check. Conan the Adventure game, check. Golf? Yes, golf, check. You can do a million things here, but to keep the focus on the characters of the show itself, here's my top ideas for a very much wish-listed reboot of the Reboot, the game reboot. The first and most obvious choice right now in this day and age of remakes and remasters is to simply remaster the PS1 game. While I have no idea how to make this game less stressful and more fun to play from a gameplay standpoint, Night Dive Studios have been on fire the last few years with some excellent remasters that spruce up the visuals, add cut content back in, and ultimately fix older games, keeping the original preserved as close to possible and allowing them to be played on modern systems. Likewise, Saber Interactive have also been having a banger last few years, with the excellent classic Tomb Raider remasters, Bounty Hunter, and most recently, my favorite series of all time, the legendary Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver games, with redone models, enhanced textures, and just a whole lot of love, given the teams at Saber working on these things are super fans. So it makes perfect sense to grab either of these guys and to try their damnedest to get the actual reboot game looking good, fun, and much more playable. They can even overlay all the original PS1 visuals with visuals that perfectly match the show. Reboot was a miracle to render back then, but by today's visuals looks straight out of the 1990s, of course. If Final Fantasy VII Remake can literally look like the Advent Children film, a remastered, re-rendered version of the reboot game could easily look just like the show. My second idea borrows a lot, or basically is, Tron Games. It might just be me, but every time I rewatch Tron, I gravitate towards Reboot again, and every time I watch Reboot, I go back to Tron in this sort of loop of worlds inside the computer. Think about it. Tron, or whoever the lead is in the Tron film, who's basically antivirus software, fights off viruses, bad programs, and plays games inside the grid, a world inside the computer. Bob, a guardian in the Reboot universe, basically antivirus software, fights off viruses and bad programs, plays games against mythical users, and it all takes place in Mainframe, a world inside a computer. Mainframe even looks like the inside of the older HDD hard disk drives. I just finished Tron Evolution again after like a decade. It's a surprisingly good tie-in movie game to Tron Legacy. I'm not joking, it's actually not that bad. There's a review coming soon, I think. But within the game, you play Anon, antivirus software, as he battles probably one of the coolest bad guys in all of video games, and a bad program Clue who wants to take over the grid. It's got that sleek look of Tron Legacy, Prince of Persia parkour that's still a good time despite it being incredibly linear, and solid disc combat that just looks so sleek. You could easily adapt this to Reboot with Bob, replace the disc with Glitch, his sentient key tool, and give it different modes. Replace Abraxas, the villain of Tron Evolution, with Megabyte or Hexadecimal or some other virus. You have part of a winning formula. I would make this open world, of course. I'd want to be able to explore all of Mainframe, maybe using Cloudpunk, a cozy taxi driving game, as an example to that. If the third-person action thing isn't your cup of tea, we could borrow from Tron 2.0, the first official sequel to the original Tron that was basically canon until Legacy retconned it all to reuse it in Tron Evolution. I'm not even kidding, the stories are almost the exact same. And I also think it's the most well-regarded Tron game to the Tron fandom, of course. You use cool disc combat, fight viruses, upgrade yourself. You have a talking bit.
So what are you exactly? A bit?
A bit? Ha! I'm a byte. Mathria wouldn't send a simple bit to do a byte's job. Let me tell you, mister.
Sorry, Byte, as a sidekick, aka Bob's sentient key tool Glitch, that you can easily replace dialogue with R2-D2 beeps and boops, of course, subtitles for communication, and as an FPS fan, seeing Mainframe from that perspective would just be awesome. Both are solid games, and maybe it's just me, but because both universes are pretty similar in world and style, give or take, of course, both games I think are a natural fit for this reboot of a reboot.
All right, folks, step right up. Step right up. Don't be late for the next level.
Moving on, we are switching gears for a little minute with one of my favorite genres, RTS, or real-time strategy. And I think I just heard some of you groan in the comments, but hear me out. Mainframe as a city is perfect for an RTS game, especially if you want to bring in later characters and have a simple narrative. We could even stretch this to have the Web Wars thing going on like later episodes. That could play out like EVE Online almost, maybe, but not as complicated. Just imagine these dudes as a faction that you get to play as. Each lead character is perfect for a style of faction within the RTS genre. Megabyte is very militaristic, so his faction could be perhaps based on a lot of the old Command and Conquer factions. Bob is the scruffy underdog, but also a guardian. He could be played very defensively, using glitch to buff and debuff your squad, summoning firewalls, cutting off enemies. He is also a guardian, so he could summon another guardian for help as a special move. Maybe there's stealth tactics in there somewhere. Hexadecimal is crazy and kind of has magical powers. If you want to look at it that way, she could be whatever spellcaster RTS class you can think of. I play a lot of Dune Spice Wars, obviously, hence all this footage, so I can maybe see her played like the X faction, only substitute tech stuff for like virus infection or something. Finally, the surprise faction could be Damon. Damon was a great character introduced later in the series and is a powerful super virus. I've been playing Re-Legion, the most cyber of punk games ever made, and its focus is on converting the people of this typical cyberpunk world to your religion of tech magic, and instead of building structures and spawning squad mates like your typical RTS, you convert pedestrians, use them as your squad, and hack buildings to keep converting and growing your religion. Replace everything I just said with infect, infect, and infect. Damon is a super virus, and that concept of Re-Legion is very easily swappable, I think, with a virus infecting programs and installing malicious software. Honestly, Re-Legion is a pretty solid overall game, and it does go on sale for like $2 or something every so often. Alright. So if RTS isn't your jam, first-person games make you sick, and the last thing you want to play is another basic third-person action game, what now? Well, simple. Casual games. Some of my favorite games as a kid were simply party games. Timon and Pumbaa, Mario Party. Reboot's world is perfectly set up to throw these characters inside a GameCube, yes, I'm not even kidding again, and we all play out whatever fun party-style game it is, and the possibilities are endless because the devs could easily make some simple, fast games, and because we are using Reboot as the IP, even create some of the games from the show, and they could simply be party games. You could even throw in 3D golf in there. So I've talked long enough about what the genre of a rebooted reboot game could be, but what about the narrative and the art style? I love the original CG look of the show. I even think it would make for a visually different game in this day and age of realistic uncanny valley repetition. But depending on what game we are making here, or just even as an option, I'd love if Matt Rhodes' art is the new style. Personally, I think it captures the original look while updating it, and he drew these in 2010, so it still holds up, to me anyway. But because I'm a man of options, I'd love if we could maybe switch back and forth between the classic CG look and whatever this new style is by Matt Rhodes. And if anything, just give me the outfits. You can't tell me Glitch doesn't look cool as a Power Glove here.
The Power Glove for your Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you and the games are one.
The only thing I won't budge on, if we do get a reboot RTS, for example, mind you, this is all hypothetical, it's just a giant wish list here, is that they better give it the classic Fallout look. In the show, every one of the main characters is called a sprite. So it makes complete logical sense to use actual sprite artwork and of course keep it classic or Matt Rhodes visuals. Hell, I'd even love to see the option to use Brendan McCarthy or Ian Gibson's actual drawings, hand-drawn and all, as the art style that we could simply swap back and forth depending on what we feel like. If those two names sound familiar to you, it's because yes, Reboot, this groundbreaking show for its time, got the two lead artists of Judge Dredd to be the designers. And yes, McCarthy is the same guy who designed everything Mad Max from Fury Road onward pretty much. It's absolutely insane they were able to pull this much talent. Narratively, I know everyone wants a conclusion to this TV show as it ended on one of the worst cliffhangers ever simply because the Reboot crew didn't know if they were going to get canceled out of nowhere, but this is a game and thus I think it should have a separate narrative, much like the original Reboot game is not canon. Something non-canon or at the very least something that is just another weekly episode basically, if you get my drift. We could take some of that Tron narrative in that Bob has to stop this evil virus, and if it's a new original villain, they can easily be killed off without breaking whatever established canon there is to help all you out there. The game could even reach the more dark territory of the later seasons by simply having everyone die off if they really want to do that. If it is an RTS, I just really like RTSs. The story doesn't really have to matter, I think, as the RTS style always lends to some casual gameplay you can pop on and off every now and again. Dune Spice Wars has zero narrative, basically, and I couldn't even tell you what the main story is of Command & Conquer besides Red Faction versus Blue Faction, and that Tim Curry was in it once. Oh, and the OG Warcraft games 1 and 2, apart from orcs being seen as bad and humans being seen as good depending on which campaign you're playing as, couldn't even tell you what the main narrative is. Yug yug. Just for funsies, as a final idea, let's just remake the Mad Max game, only it's a destroyed mainframe and Bob is in his flying Cadillac. Maybe I'll drop the Mad Max video too soon, I don't know. What is everyone's thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you all want to see? What are your hopes and dreams? No one knows for sure, but I intend to find out by you all leaving a comment or a like on this video if you liked it. If you dislike this video, dislike it. I've been Calypso, I've talked enough, and I will see you in the next one. Stay frosty.